Mohammad, welcome. It's
Thank
great
you
to
very
have you.
much.
Yeah, so start this off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So I'm an assistant professor of ethics at Northwestern University in Chicago. I teach and do research on topics about research. So this could be ethics of research, open science, the use of technology in research, and in particular the use of AI, research integrity, and overall, this is like a whole field that is called meta research, which means about research. So we do research on research, and I teach ethics of clinical research, ethics of research in humanities, social sciences, ethics in engineering, and that is what I do.
Interesting. So, when you do, personally, I think a huge part of technology's future, at least the future development, should be centered around education. And you are a professor, you do research, and you research ethics of artificial intelligence. What do you think that, or seeing that artificial intelligence seems to be the future of technology, what do you think its role will be in education in the future?
Let me take a step back and ask a question from you. Why do you think the role of AI in education is important?
Oof. Well, seeing that is a good question, actually. Seeing that, why do I think of? I think that it's such a powerful tool to at least gather information in such a quick in such a short amount of time, that I think that it would make sense that it would be used for education because of its ability to compress complex concepts into a digestible format.
Okay, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So, I think piggybacking on what you said about AI features, depending on the context and how the education system is organized, because you can imagine that in different places here in the US, I also understand that in different states, like there's different ways the education system is organized. I can think of many examples. AI can be used as a tool to support students, but it can also be used to support teachers for, I don't know, grading, for creating syllabus, and so on. For students, it can be used to, a lot of people use the term as a mentor. I don't really like that word. I think a tutor is a slightly better word, because mentor has traditionally been someone who may offer deeper insights about your professional personal life, and we don't want AI in those areas. And I think there's also now people who suggest that in some contexts AI can replace some teaching jobs. I think the rich and more entitled would still rely on human teachers. So perhaps full AI integration would only be the case for the working class and for people who may not be able to afford human teachers.
Do you think it'll be like a huge development for the lower class people, kind of like the internet is, due to all of its free resources for teaching yourself skills and all that?
Yes, but also I think it would help people who may think a little bit differently. Like I know that AI is now also being used for by people who do homeschooling. Imagine you're a parent to a 7-year-old, and all of a sudden you have this tool that, to your point, can compress and provide insights from a large body of information. That's a great tool if you're homeschooling your kids.
Yeah, and I think for little unexpected things, like last year I had a class, what was it? It was microeconomics, and my teacher recommended we were learning, I don't remember what we were learning specifically, but he told us he was like, try using ChatGPT to generate like 20 practice problems, and I mean, I did that, and it worked perfectly. I remember like just for small things like that like you wouldn't really expect. I feel like it's just a huge positive.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think different teachers are taking advantage of it in different ways. And that comes from an understanding that these tools are not going to go away. They are here. So perhaps in order for the student to become a more successful person for the society in the future, the student needs to already start working with tools that are the tools of the future. So, it's like if you were a kid in the 90s and your teacher would ask you to go to the internet, that would be totally spot on, because the internet became how all jobs are being carried out and all tasks are conducted in the 2000s and still, so that kind of makes sense from an educational point of view. But I don't know to what extent education, like when educating, say, the K-12 level, teachers can warn students about the side effects, or about verification methods, or about the impacts of AI.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially because I think a lot of times, especially in K through 12, like kids don't always have the right questions to ask too.
Or I think another way of saying what you said is that their critical thinking skills are not yet developed. Mm-hmm. And so asking a kid to, independently and autonomously use AI that is full of all kind of flaws and can give you erroneous and biased answers and so on is a little bit of a risk. But it's also a risk that might be worth taking depending on the context and the education system again.
Yeah. Okay, well, so about a month and a half ago, I think at this point, the DeepSeek R1 AI model came out. Kind of shocked the world. People didn't know what to think. A lot of tech stocks went down. So what are your thoughts on this, and should the U.S. have any worries about this?
I think you also read that. I reflected on this in an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune. I think this is positive, and can save us from the American monopoly on AI. Also, I think to the extent that tools like DeepSeek help us reduce energy consumption and reduce social and environmental impacts, it is a great development. Now, whether the U.S. should be worried, I think depends on who's being referred to as the U.S. Like, are we talking about U.S. companies? Are we talking about U.S. laypersons?
I would say U.S. companies.
Right. I think no. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this: are the U.S. companies worried that Honda and Hyundai and Kia make cars? No, because competition will ultimately benefit all involved actors, and this is a basic principle of capitalism and free economic trade. Basically, the survival of the more efficient system. I think Deep System was a good wake-up call for the U.S. AI sector, and will push all the involved companies to think more creatively and more comprehensively about their models, and also be aware that their monopoly is not going to last forever. Nothing is going to last forever. Like if you look at the history of commercial companies like the East Indian Company, like all these phenomenal companies that had greater assets and influence than entire countries, all went away. So all of these ways of creating and collecting wealth is sort of ephemeral, and this was a wake-up call for the American tech sector, which is great.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it seems like it put more of an emphasis on efficiency for U.S. companies, especially, instead of just like the raw power, throwing all these GPUs and all that stuff at it. and it was open source, correct?
In order for AI to be open source, we have to have four open, like four things need to be open. You need open training data, like you have to disclose what your training data was. You need to disclose the weights in your model. You need to disclose the code in your model, and you also need to disclose the architecture of the model. In the case of DeepSeek, only two of these were open, so they did not disclose the training data, and they also did not disclose the code, but they did disclose the architecture and the weights. So it is more open. DeepSeek is more open than ChatGPT and Gemini, but it is not fully open. There are other models that are not commercially as successful, or they are not as big, that are more open, if openness is the criterion.
Okay, so then has OpenAI made any of those four open or available?
Nope.
Or okay,
And they are not going to.
Really? Because I saw that they were being pressured into it. I think a little bit, at least after the whole DeepSeek thing dropped. But
I doubt it.
okay,
And if they do, I think there's going to be a catch at some point. Like, it's not going to be fully open. Like, there's got to be a catch.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I remember when the model first released, all the headlines were saying that it cost them $6 million to train or something, 5 or 6 million.
Yeah.
But then I was hearing like numbers like 1.6 billion. Do you know anything about that?
I think it's very difficult to substantiate or verify any of those claims, because this is like developed in a context where sometimes, they undervalue the currency. There's like they are also not fully transparent. Let's not forget that. And I think when OpenAI was released, we didn't really question how much money it cost Microsoft or OpenAI to develop. Like, we may have some estimates, but the overall cost is impossible to calculate. Like, if you think about, for instance, the social and environmental costs, some of those costs are not calculable, period.
Yeah.
So the overall costs cannot be calculated. I think DeepSeek was successful in using that figure to kind of belittle, and they used it as a sort of marketing tool to say, look, we can do this so much cheaper, like it's unfathomable, and that was successful because it made the noise a lot louder.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, but then DeepSeek was also, it's supposed to be about on par with OpenAI's model, correct?
From my understanding and from the sort of analyses that I have read, in most tasks, it is on par with OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Okay. So, going back to more broad aspects of artificial intelligence, where do you see artificial intelligence, like the development of artificial intelligence, going in the next 20 years? I know it's a bit of a broad question, but do you have any idea?
I think it is going to, so from my understanding, we are going to see more integration of artificial intelligence and robotics. So we are going to see more AI agents. In my context in research, AI agents are now being used as like an assistant in a chemistry lab. So you provide a prompt to this new AI agent. One of them is called Organa, that is developed by the University of Toronto. You provide a prompt, and then the system is able to parse the prompt, create objectives and steps, conduct those steps, and write a report, similar to what like a postdoc would do. And this is just the beginning. Like, think about your Roomba vacuum cleaner. That is a rudimentary AI agent. You bring it to your home, and it already knows, okay, now I need to make a plan, determine what the plan of the house is, and then I need to clean this space so many times per week. It makes those decisions without asking you. You can change the default model, but for the most part, it is able to make autonomous decisions. Like if you put, I don't know, a new obstacle in front of it, it knows how to navigate that. It knows how to, it thinks about a contingency plan on the spot. Now think this is a rudimentary model that was developed already, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. Now we are already a lot further, and once we plug large language models and more sophisticated AI models, this is gonna be like next level. And once we are finally at the stage where we can take better advantage of quantum computers, that is gonna be like, the next level.
Yeah. So there was a new chip released
Yeah.
by or announced by
Google.
Microsoft a week or two ago. The
First
quantum
Google,
chip.
yeah.
Yeah. Is that a huge step, or is that?
That's one step in that direction. I mean, this is like, don't forget, technology moves incrementally. And there are times when, like, it reaches a tipping point, and then there's that last piece of the puzzle that is put in place that it, like, suddenly goes haywire. In that sense, I think, like, if you think about large language models, the ChatGPT release was that sort of tipping point for the generative AI. Like it made generative AI suddenly so popular, and you know, it it made it possible for even normal people who know nothing about large language models, know nothing about computers, to be able to use it. The other day I was talking with my landlord, and she was like, "Oh, I'm using AI." And she's like an older lady, is like, I don't know, 75. I doubt even if she can make a hotspot with her phone, but she was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm using AI." And I was like, "Oh God, how are you using it?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm advertising this new property I have, and I asked ChatGPT to write a description of the place, and it wrote it much better than I do, and I've been doing this for 40 years, you know? So in that sense, ChatGPT was one of those moments in the technology that, in the development of AI technology, that made it really popular. I don't think the Google chip is that moment yet. Like, we haven't reached quantum computing is still in its embryonic stage. It has a lot of potential, but it's still in an embryonic stage.
Yeah, quantum computing is something I haven't really wrapped my head around. Sometimes people throw facts, like ideas about it, and it sounds like incomprehensible to me.
So, to give you an analogy that will always stay with you, the difference between the computer me and you are using now and a quantum computer is comparable to the difference between the computer I and you are using and an abacus.
Oh, whew.
Yeah.
So you say it's in its embryonic stage, when will it be will it ever be like at like a consumer level? I mean, one day, but
I think yes, but not anytime soon.
okay.
And if it will be first only affordable to a select group of people, and yeah. But
Yeah,
it
it
will
is.
it will be ultimately, yeah, maybe, I don't know, in 50 years maybe.
Okay, okay. I'd imagine the amount of power you need to
Yeah,
power these
that's
things is just
that's the thing.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back to AI. So in the past 6 or 7 years or so, it seems like, I mean, the general consensus is that it's like been accelerating just like astronomically. Do you think that the development of artificial intelligence will keep accelerating like it has throughout the next 20, 30 years? Because that's what I've been hearing. So people
I
have been
mean, with
telling
the
me, I
amount
don't
of
know.
money that is being pumped into it, I think it will accelerate. But in some areas, we have already touched the moment of diminishing returns. It's like 2 years ago, there was this huge excitement about AI, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, like I have to invest in AI." People who had companies and stuff, and they started investing in new AI models. That some of them are now realizing, well, that was maybe not a really good investment, because the AI model that I thought will do this and that and the other is not exactly a messiah. I still have to deal with so many other challenges. And because AI needs a lot of maintenance and updating and expertise and so on, this is actually more expensive than I thought it will be. So whether it will exponentially grow or not, I think depends on many different things. I cannot give you a good answer to that, but I think at some point we will reach the point of diminishing returns.
Okay. What do you? I mean, many people are kind of afraid of artificial intelligence. For a lot of people, it sparks a little bit of anxiety. People think of Terminator, Terminator 2. What are your fears over artificial intelligence throughout the
I have
future?
many fears, like use of AI by malicious actors is one. Militarized use of AI is one. Like, I don't know, it was actually in the news today that the Israeli army has been using AI to, like, they eavesdropped a lot of conversations, and they have implemented this new model to intercept and, like, kill more efficiently, basically. So the military use is really scary. Malicious use is scary. Like, think about, I don't know, a nutcase that instead of going on top of a building using an AR-15 will just use an AI to make a bioweapon. It's like next
Yeah.
level harm. The economic impact is another one. Like, think about loss of jobs and so on. And this is not something, so the economic impact on jobs is not something that is going to impact us today. Like, it's not going to be overnight. When we look at the history of technology and how other technologies have impacted societies, we see that sometimes it can take up to like 50, 60 years for the real impact to show up. I'm afraid of social and environmental impacts. I have also written about this in the Chicago Tribune, like the use of water and the use of electricity, and how these can impact the mining of minerals, rare earth minerals, how these can impact the nearby communities is like mind-boggling. It blows your mind when you read about it. I'm afraid of ethical issues, legal issues, the sort of the slow decline of human interactions. But my all-time biggest fear is the rise of this new social class, the tech bros, because they are already impacting politics, and this is just the beginning. That's my biggest fear, because they are going to be able to, they might be able to, if we don't hurry up, if we don't get our act together as, as a society, they might be able to socially engineer our communities. And that is really scary. Like, you see how they are affecting politics and elections all around the world. You see how they are changing people's views, how they are dividing different communities by means of spreading disinformation, misinformation, and so on. So that is my biggest fear.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like already. It seems like it's hard to create an artificial intelligence model that doesn't have biases, but to think that, I mean, the amount of power that these companies have is a bit scary, considering that like what they are creating
Yeah.
could end up being so powerful. It already seems to be like an extremely powerful thing, and yeah, it scares me. But I mean, to end on a positive note, what are your hopes for the future of AI?
My hope is that AI would help us with like, scientific discoveries and so on. But honestly, those hopes are still kind of rather slim, because AI, even in the context of science, can only help us in limited ways. And at the moment, our biggest ever concern should be climate change, and AI is not exactly able to help us address climate change. AI can analyze data much more efficiently, AI can collect data much more efficiently, but AI cannot change us to become better consumers. AI cannot help us to reduce emissions because it is one of the main sources of creating emissions. I think as humans, we are adaptable, and we have always and will always find a way to deal with challenges. But it is in the process that we will lose so much. We will lose our human fellows, we will lose our existing social institutions, we will lose a lot of our heritage and history, unfortunately, that seems so dear to us at the moment. And that is not very positive. You wanted to end on a positive note, but that's because I think things are not exactly moving in a right direction at the moment. And whether with AI or without it, we will have to deal with the challenges ourselves. Like there's no one. It's like if you have homework to do, no one is going to do your homework for you. AI is not going to be able to do our homework for us. AI is not going to help us deal with climate change. AI is not going to help us deal with the negative impact of social media. I don't know if you have read this book that was published in 2023. It's called The Anxious Generation. Like when you see the rates of depression, suicide, anxiety among people of your generation, there is very little to be hopeful about, because the very same people who are able to change those issues are the very same people who are in charge of those companies that are doing that to us. But I think what I'm hopeful is people like you who are interested in topics like this, and that makes me hopeful. When you reached out, I thought this was a really interesting and good prompt, and that is what gives me hope. People like you.
Great. It's great to hear. Well, Mohammad, thank you for coming
Thank
on.
you.
It's a huge honor. I mean, I'm so happy you said yes, and it was great talking to you. Don't want to keep you too long, but
Perfect.
yeah, thank you so much.
Let me know how this goes, and once you have a final product, please share it with me.
Yes, of course.
Perfect.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.